and adult ticket second. That should be your Y, but being more specific about what it represents. Okay. I'm gonna show the names. Safia, can you be a little bit more specific? So what about the adult tickets? Is it the cost? Is it the number of adult tickets? Those are basically your two options. So you can read through the problem and it tells you one of those. So it's going to be the other one. Good, Simone. So Clara, read back through your problem and see if you can find the answer to what you identified as your variable. Find the answer in the problem, that can't be your variable because your variable is an unknown. So Anna, I need you to be a little bit more precise because you highlighted the key information, but I don't know what part of that is X. Is it the number of tickets, or is it the cost of the tickets? Good, Ian. And if you get the go ahead, you can move forward to the next slide. Good, Muriel. Muriel, do you have a screen you can write on?
Yeah.
What kind of device do you use?
It's a drawing tablet.
Oh, that's cool. I like it. It probably makes things a lot easier. Good, Kaylee. Joyce, I'm going to ask you also, if you read that through the problem, could you find the answer to that? So like if you read the problem, do you know the cost of student tickets? And if the answer is unknown. Same, Anna, if you know the cost already, that's not your variable. Oliver, your variables are not your answers. They are what is the unknown? What are we looking for? Okay. All right, so we have, if you're unsure or I have not commented on you yet, if you come back to my screen, you have two pieces of information or some main information. You have student tickets, and some of you did this highlighting, which was super helpful, and you have adult tickets. Now, you already know the cost. It tells you the cost. So the cost cannot be your variable. Okay, that's not your variable. What you don't know is how many tickets were sold. You don't know how many student tickets or how many adult tickets. So your variable is going to be the number of student, or you can say amount. So for X, you could say the number of student tickets sold, and for Y, the number of adult tickets sold, or the amount of adult tickets sold. So that's your key word in this, what we're looking for, is that you recognize that it's the number of tickets and not the cost, because we know the cost. If we were trying to figure out cost, we already know that in the problem. There's no math for you to do. Like, that's great, I'm glad it's there, it helps us write equations, but basically that's not our variable. It's helpful, just not the variable. So I'm gonna not mark out the number, I'm gonna mark out, oops. We don't need to know cost. We need to know number. So let's go back. If you've not updated, make sure you do that. Good. Sasha. Oliver, good. Muriel, I've already gone through you. Simone, good. Ryan, good. Oliver, if you can go back and update yours. Good, Laurel. And you guys aren't going to be able to move on to the next slide until you answer this. Evan, go back and take a look at yours. Again, you could answer the question. The total amount of money is $4,500. That's already answered in the problem, so it can't be a variable. The two unknowns are how many adult tickets there are and how many student tickets there are. All right, the next slide is just a overview of the problem again. Asking you to think about what important information do you need. So if you need to write something, you can, but there's nothing to actually write on this slide. It's just to think about how are you going to start setting up equations. Kaylee, question?
What method are we supposed to be using to solve this?
Yeah, so when you get into solving applications, you get to choose your method. This one, when we get to the actual equations, when we write them, I'm going to explain to you which method I would choose, but you can choose, I wouldn't choose graphing because 700 and 4,500 are going to give us a pretty huge graph. But you could choose to do substitution or elimination based on whichever one kind of works best for your brain, whatever process works best. Okay, so key information and things are highlighted. We know student tickets are $5. We know adult tickets are $10. I highlighted in a color coordinated method because, and so this is like another key thing, on Nearpod, change the size of your pen so it's easier to write and doesn't look ridiculous. Because we have these two key pieces of information, 4,500 and 700. Those are going to basically lead us into our equations. One equation is dealing with money, and one equation is dealing with a number of tickets. So the money equation has to deal with the cost of the tickets. The number equation has to deal with just how many tickets are sold. So that lets us know that there are two equations. One of them has to equal the 700, which has nothing to do with money, and the other one has to equal the 4,500, which deals with the cost of the tickets. Sometimes you'll see with linear systems, they're connected with a bracket. I think this class was the one that said Mr. Aseo called that like a squiggly thing, if you had Mr. Aseo. So you can connect them with the bracket. That just lets you know that they're connected. But we haven't really, like that would be more of a set notation thing to guideline. And then you're filling in, well, what's the other part of the equation? So like what's missing from this part of the equation and this part of the equation. So let's see what we have. Ian, yours is great. You can move on to the next slide. Good, Safia.
Damn.
Good, Mariel. Good, Ryan. Yeah, you guys are doing really well. Awesome, Jonah. Good, Kaylee. Good, Kevin. Laurel, there's just a little mistake in your coefficient for y. You have adult student tickets are $5, which was correct, but oh, there you go, you fixed it. Perfect. Yeah, you guys are doing really well. Sometimes writing these equations can be the hardest part. So I have found with a lot of kind of standardized testing that they always give you a sentence with two pieces of information or two sentences with the key information. In this particular problem, that's this second part here. They give you these two totals, the total of 4,500 and the total number of tickets sold. And so that can kind of guide you into, well, my two equations have to do with those two numbers. And once you can kind of set that part up, then you can it makes the equations themselves a little bit easier to identify instead of just looking at everything all at once. Good, Daniel. Alex, quick question for you. Actually, I can go back and check. I just want to see how you defined your variables. Hope you didn't. So, Alex, if you defined your X variable as adult tickets, then the 10 would go with the X. If you defined your X variable as student tickets, then the 5 would go with the X. As a class, we did that student tickets were X. So that means it would be 5X plus 10Y. So I would probably stick to that strategy as you solve, just because if everyone is on the same page, when you're solving, it'll be less confusing. Good. So everything I see, even if I haven't called your name, I'm not seeing any other mistakes so far. Joyce, I really like yours, so I'm going to share it in the chat box. I just like your writing. It looks very neat. Clara, question?
No, sorry, I figured it out.
Okay. Anyone have a question about the equations? So I did put them in the chat box. The two equations that we're looking at, the first one dealing with the number of tickets is just your X plus Y. Number of student tickets plus the number of adult tickets will give you a total of 700 tickets. The second equation is dealing with your cost. So 5 times the number of student tickets. Oh my gosh, that's so hard to write today. Plus 10 times the number of adult tickets will give you the cost of all the tickets. And that is your system. So that's going to lead me back to, so Kaylee asked a question, which strategy should you use? At this point, it's up to you. Wouldn't use graphing because 700 and 4,500 are big numbers. This one has a pretty easy option to solve for X or Y. So you could rewrite an equation and substitute it in. I personally, whenever I see two equations already in standard form, I like to use elimination. I find it a lot easier to just line things up and to eliminate. And to do that, I would have to change the X plus Y equation. I would have to multiply it by either a -5 or a -10 to do the elimination. Clara, do you have a question? Okay. So again, you can pick your strategy here. This is where you can also upload notes. So if you would rather do this by hand, there's a little option here to pick a picture. So one thing you can do, and I'm going to do this with my notes, I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to take a picture and I'm going to airdrop it. So again, this is if you have a Mac. If you don't have a Mac, I don't know exactly how you send pictures, but I'm sure you figured it out. Generally, you find that when you airdrop something, it comes through in a format that's not compatible. So I'm going to airdrop it. I'm going to do Control and Shift 4, not Control Shift 4, and I'm going to screenshot so it saves it to my desktop. And then I'm going to upload it here. Screenshot, open. And those are my notes, and then the problem is also solved down here, so I can make it bigger if I need to. And then just making sure to go back and actually answer the question. So how many student tickets were sold, filling in the blank, and how many adult tickets were sold. And I'm going to also put that screenshot in the chat box, so in case you're wondering what my notes look like. They're not neat, they're not perfect. If I were being my perfectionist self, they would probably have to be rewritten. But they're a little color coordinated, so I wrote down the steps in one color, and then practiced the steps in the other color with the problem, and then showed my work in blue. So you can take a look at that. I chose to do elimination. I eliminated by multiplying by -5, but again, you could use whichever strategy you find the most appropriate. So if you find it easier to do substitution, you could do that. If you multiplied by -10 to eliminate the y, you could do that. Just making sure at the end you know which one is adult and which one is student. Remember, X represents our student ticket. So making sure that you have the number of student tickets as your X value. Good, Ian. Good, Mariel. Safia, I think yours are backwards, but your work looks great. So good. So Safia chose to do substitution. She got the same answer as Ian, who did elimination by multiplying by -5. Mariel did substitution. She got the same answer. So again, like, you can choose whichever strategy works for you. Oliver, you should have some work shown. Kevin, some work. And Kevin, I think your student and adult are backwards. Or they're not. I don't think I know they are.
I did all my work on a separate sheet of paper.
So that's why I just showed, take the, see how on my screen? I imported the screenshot. Because answers are great, but my job is to make sure you know how. Because I'm also very aware that there are, what is that website? The one where you can just go and like put in your problem and get the answer. Simbo Lab, that one. Like, sure, that's great. You do a problem and you're like, I'm not sure if it's right, so I'm gonna double check it in Simbo Lab. So I'm gonna find system, or I have it on here. Let's see. Clearly, I'm not super familiar with it. I don't know. I'm not gonna go through all of this for you, but like, yes, you can solve systems using these apps, and that's fine. Like, if you want to check your work, like, you do have those resources, is what it is. But that's why when I ask you to upload work, what I'm looking for is that you understand the concept. Use those resources. Check your work. Make sure you're like you can, like, I have no problem with you going back and like making sure your answers are right. But don't just submit an answer and not understand, because that's really going to impact you when you move into your other math classes, which will hopefully be in person. All right, so it looks like most of you are on the right track. So there are 500 student tickets and 200 adult tickets. 500 student tickets and 200 adult tickets. So double check that you have your variables in the correct order. And you can check those in both equations. 500 plus 200 is 700. 5 times 500 plus 10 times 200 is 4,500. And if it works for both equations, you know it's true. Again, you have access to the computer. If you want to check with the graph, x plus y equals 700, 5x plus 10y equals 4,500. Now on your test, don't be like, well, I used a graph, because, you know, but you can zoom out and you can find that solution, and it is the ordered pair, 500, 200. Again, you know you did it correct. So there are ways you can check your work, but I am looking to see your work. All right, so we have 8 minutes of class. If you move on to slide number 10, so I'm going to show you on my screen really quickly. So first, on slide number 10, it has the problem for you to try. After you submit, slide number 11 has the solution for you to check. If you get it wrong, you can go back and do it again. Slide number 12, same thing. You have a problem. After you submit, you're self-checking on slide number 13. So there's actually only 2 problems for you to do independently, and 2 of the slides are the self-check. I am going to move you into your groups so you can work on this together. But at the end of class at 11:40, you will be able to leave directly from your breakout room. I wish it would just save these breakout rooms. That would make things so much easier. So are there any questions about what we are doing before I open these breakout rooms?